Good afternoon, Jaguars. I'm Dr. Gettings, your principal, and as you probably know by now, our theme this year with Thrive is accountability and what that looks like for us as students and our school community, but also just accountability in general. And so with me today, I've got someone maybe some of you know, assistant principal here at Blue Springs South, Mrs. Haines. She also served time here at South as a teacher in the science department as well. So we're going to welcome Mrs. Haines here, and we're going to talk a little bit about this accountability stuff that we're diving into. So thanks for being here, Ms. Haines. Appreciate you
Thank you for having
doing
me.
this. We've talked a little bit about some things in your life, and so why don't you start with telling us a little bit about what high school was like for you.
Sure. So to give a little backstory, my parents divorced when I was really young. And I lived with my mom as I grew up, visiting my dad on holidays, sometimes weekends, sometimes we'd take trips together. Fast forward to high school, my mom and I started not getting along freshman, sophomore year. And so my sophomore year, I thought it would be best to go live with my dad. And I quickly found out that, that wasn't really the best spot for me. He was working a lot. In the summer, I was working a lot. And I just felt really alone, and I kind of started to, just regress a little bit, disengage. So I felt pretty isolated, and I decided to go back living with my mom. The problems were still there. We still didn't get along great. So my junior year, the start of my junior year, was a struggle. I didn't do a fall sport at that time, and that was the first time I'd never did a team sport. So I again felt more isolated. My grades started dropping. I wasn't putting an emphasis on school. My parents were arguing then at that point, more so than ever, and then it escalated to the point where they were determining whether to have custody, who was going to have custody of me. And so that was hard to see, hard to be in that position of seeing both parents fighting over me, basically. And I was making decisions that, weren't helping the matter. I wasn't putting an emphasis on school. My grades were dropping so much so that when basketball season came around, I couldn't play until my grades came up. So it eventually went to court. At that point, it just was kind of a spiral. I was spiraling out of control. I wasn't, having healthy habits, coping habits. Again, my grades were not good. And so my parents ended up going to court and basically trying to determine who I was, to live with, who was the better parent. So as a teenager, to be put in that position, to have to choose which parent to live with was really hard and traumatic. I think at this point, looking back, I think I was depressed as well, and that didn't help matters. And so on the day of court, I remember very vividly still, going up the elevator and those elevator doors opening, and I see my principal and my coach standing there, my track coach. And I think in that moment, I was mortified. I knew that they were not there for me on my mom's side of things. So my dad had asked them to be there, and I guess in my mind probably to be against me. And so that was just really detrimental and painful. Not to mention humiliating that my story was now infiltrating school, where it was kind of supposed to be a place that I felt like I could walk through the doors and nobody knew what was going on in my personal life. And so after that day in court, I think then it really affected me so much so that when track season came out, and track was kind of my sport, I think, I was pretty good at it. I decided not to go out. I made the decision, I didn't even think twice. My mom tried to talk me out of it, but I just, in my mind, I thought that I was, kind of hurting my parents by not going out for track. And I wasn't going to win any medals for my school because of what had happened. And so I made that decision.
Yeah, so you're talking a little bit about how the family dynamics that you were walking through started to impact school grades, athletics, those kinds of things. You shared with me a little bit, once you got into college, you started to realize some things about decisions that you had made and realize some things about accountability and what that started to look like for you. Can you speak to a little bit about some of that realization that you came to when you finally got into college?
Yeah, and again, I can remember this day pretty vividly still too. I really didn't think about my decision. My senior year in high school, I didn't go out for any sports. I worked and didn't really think twice about the decision I'd made. But it wasn't until college, I remember leaving one of my classes, and one of the girls that I ran against in high school was leaving her class, and we walked out to the parking lot together, and I was, asking her how she was doing. And we had a conversation, and she told me, yeah, I'm running for school. And it really hit me then that I had made a decision, because that girl I would beat in the open 8 in high school. And so here she is running for college, and I'm not. And I think in that moment, I realized the magnitude of my decision. And I sat in my car for a long time that day, pretty upset with myself, that I had made that decision and changed my whole life, changed the trajectory of my life. It could have been very different.
Yeah. So if you would, share with us a little bit with our students here, as you think about accountability and what we're talking about this year and what that means, thinking back on that whole process, not only what you went through in high school, but also the decisions that you made and then the realization you had in college. If you're going to leave some stuff with our students to think about with accountability and decision making, those kinds of things, what would you say based off of your own experiences?
Right. So that day in my car, sitting there, I think that was the moment that I really knew. I had always known that I made that decision. I think it would have been easy for me to place the blame game on my parents, but they didn't make that decision. They didn't make the decision about, me not studying for tests and doing my homework and grades falling and me being benched in high school, and all these decisions that I made in high school that affected my future were me. That was my decision. And so I feel like that I grew as a person a lot that day in my car, because I sat and I not only looked back at my decision and the effect it had on my future, but I also took accountability for that decision. And I made peace with it, but I also sat there, and over time, it didn't take just the day in my car, but over time, I had to think about how can I do things differently. I think in any decision that anybody makes that may be a mistake, I think by taking accountability and really thinking about what I had done, the decision that the part that I played in it, what did that do? And I think that would be something that I would leave with everybody is, I think in any decision you have to just think about the part you played in it and take that accountability, because it's going to make you grow as a human being a lot.
Yeah.
So.
Great. Okay, Jags, there you go, a little bit of Mrs. Haines' story for you. I appreciate you having the willingness to get up here and share that with our students and staff. And so I challenge you, as we talk through these things this year and as you go through your school year, what's going to be your accountability story, right? You just listened to Miss Haines and some of her life and what has molded her to today. And I just challenge you to think about that over the next few moments, days, weeks. At the end of this school year, just as simple as that, what's going to be your accountability story? Hope you guys have a great rest of the afternoon. Go Jags.